has always been known as a sort of mean character in the Amazing Digital Circus. His first appearance even shows him having a bad attitude with Kane. In today's episode, I'm gonna dive into Jax's character and attempt to explain what's up with Jax in episode 2, why he's so mean, and what could happen to Jax by the end of the show. But before I go in depth, I want to generally explain Jax as a character, and how he fits into the Amazing Digital Circus. Jax is a mischievous, laid-back, sassy, and egotistical character. He's unempathetic, and he doesn't quite mind his imprisonment in the digital circus. One of his more famous lines, which perfectly describes him, is this:
I'm fine with doing whatever, as long as I get to see funny things happen to people.
This line kind of shows his whole personality, because he quite literally just does things that he finds funny, most often at the expense of others, which gives off a cruel and indifferent type vibe, as well as just making him look like a jerk. But there is a big difference between how he acts in episode 1 and how he begins to start acting in episode 2. And in this video, we're gonna be discovering if that's a good or a bad thing for Jax, and what it might lead to in the later episodes. But first, let's go over some important things from the pilot episode. As we can see from the very start, Jax is shown to be short-tempered and rude. At this point though, Jax is somewhat more of a relatable character. I mean, I would also be upset about having to completely redo the intro song. This is only the beginning for Jax though, as it only gets worse from here.
Wouldn't that more likely mean the exit does exist?
Could also mean you just have a jump start and losing your mind.
In this clip, Jax tells Pomni that she got a head start on going insane, which makes her even more scared.
By the way, I may have left something in your room today, so let me know if you find it. You're not afraid of centipedes, are you?
Jax! That's literally my only fear. Why would you do this?
What? It could be a completely unrelated question. You'll never know until it's too late.
And here we see Jax tease Ragatha by telling her that he may or may not have put a centipede in her room, knowing that centipedes are her one and only fear. While we never find out if there's a centipede put in Ragatha's room, it's pretty safe to assume, knowing Jax, that he actually put one in there. But now I feel like we got a pretty good idea of how Jax acted in episode 1. He seems to somewhat be a friend to everyone while still making fun of people. He pushes it too far in some ways, especially with Gengal and Ragatha, who are both mostly forgiving to him. But in episode 2, he acts a lot worse. So now let's analyze how he acts in episode 2 to see how his behavior's changed over time.
Alright, Gangle, when we catch up to him, I'll jump over, crawl inside, and shoot him repeatedly until they're unrecognizable.
I feel like that violates some kind of convention.
You're violating my ears with your clapback. Get driving, driver!
In this part, Jax's first instinct is to shoot him up with this shotgun until they're unrecognizable, meaning he would continue to shoot them until there is nothing left. While Gengal protests this, Jax gets really mean, basically telling Gengal to stop talking and continue driving. In this one clip alone, you can already see that something is definitely up with Jax in the way he's being exponentially worse than he was in episode 1.
Oh, Pomni, I'm sure there's some way you could help out here. Maybe when we catch up to them, we could...
Gotta be assertive. Like this!
Hey! Jax!
Next, Jax grabs Pomni and throws her out of the truck. Ragatha gets really angry at Jax because Pomni is still warming up to the circus, and treating her like that will only make it worse. But Jax obviously doesn't care.
Hey, Ribbons! Up and at 'em!
I don't think we...
Aren't you supposed to be submissive and agreeable? Move it!
In this part, we see much more of Jax bullying Gengal for literally no reason, telling Gengal to go on the rocky ground, even though the vehicle isn't supposed to go on the terrain like that. This later causes Ragatha and Kinger to be impaled with several knives, as well as shaking around the whole vehicle. This scene has quite a lot to unpack. Firstly, Jax tells Gengal to ram into the alligators. Ragatha pops up and tells Jax that it's a bad idea, but Jax palms her in the face and shoves her to the ground, back into the knives. Then he tells Gengal once again to ram into them, or he'll tell Ragatha about the figurine thing, which I feel sorry for those who understand the joke. Then you realize Pomni is on the other bus when it's getting rammed. Jax genuinely seems to have no regard for others. This is the end of the truck scene, but there's one more scene in episode 2 that really shows how messed up he is.
Oh, hey, maybe I didn't leave the gate unlocked for nothing after all.
What? I thought he was dead. You still did that? Okay, wait. You did what now?
Well, love to help you again sometime. Bye!
In this scene, Jax reveals he let the fudge monster who eats the candy people back into the kingdom, meaning that he is going to eat all of the candy NPCs. Jax didn't even have to do that in the first place, but he just did to create chaos. So now that I've gone over both episode 1 and episode 2, there is an obvious winner in which episode he acts worse. And without a doubt, no question, it's episode 2. He behaves rather strangely in this episode, and there's some things I want to go over. Firstly, throughout the entirety of episode 2, he seems extra violent, being especially mean and dismissive of others, to a point where it even made me feel uncomfortable. Something I think should be noted is this clip right here.
We like to have a little funeral service to remember the people who abstract.
As you can see, when talking about Kaufmo abstracting, Kane looks like he is distraught or maybe even sad about Kaufmo's funeral, which is way out of line for Jax. I think this one facial expression from Jax actually might explain his behavior throughout the entirety of the second episode, and why he is much worse this time around than in episode 1. I think what's really troubling here is Jax, and what makes him behave in this way is actually Kaufmo getting abstracted. It might seem crazy at first considering his initial reaction, cracking jokes and running away instead of helping, but just hear me out. I think that Jax is secretly upset, but instead of showing his weakness, he sets up self-defense by behaving like a jerk so he doesn't damage his ego by showing others that he's upset by the loss of Kaufmo, which actually hurt him. When you think about it, it makes total sense, but I could be completely wrong. Finally, I want to go over why Jax is like this, and I have one theory about this. I think that Jax only behaves this way to avoid going crazy and abstracting, because if you think about it, his only option to staying alive is not going crazy and abstracting. By adopting this laid-back and nonchalant attitude while also teasing and bullying others, it's entertaining enough to keep him from being abstracted. Like he said, he likes seeing funny things happen to other people, and in the Amazing Digital Circus, this is always bound to happen. So Jax seems to be thriving in the Amazing Digital Circus. All we can do is hope that he gets a redemption arc or something, but there's actually one other thing to consider here. Maybe Jax is the only one who's doing it right. The one goal to get through the Amazing Digital Circus is not to become abstracted, and the only way to not become abstracted is by not going insane. Because of how formulaic and predictable the adventures are that Kane puts everyone through, you are bound to go insane by doing them day after day after day. Jax, however, doesn't really follow this. Instead, he decides to cause chaos everywhere he goes, which is entertaining for him. Jax has realized that the adventures are mostly BS. And to be fair, so is Zooble, because she doesn't even go on the adventures, but that's another theory. But anyways, the point is, Jax causes chaos and confusion everywhere he goes. I think this is why we see Kane being so random and mean throughout the episodes. He's trying to entertain himself so himself doesn't go insane, because he knows that everything around him is pretty much pointless. And while I feel bad for the other characters having to deal with Jax, you can't really blame him. For as far as we know, these characters probably don't remember each other in real life, so there's not much of a reason for Jax to even be nice to them in the first place. For all Jax knows, they could also be NPCs, so maybe Jax could just be a bit nicer to everyone else, and maybe cool it down a little bit. But at the end of the day, I think he might be doing the right thing for himself, and I'm just interested to see what happens to Jax in later episodes.